Okay. Yeah, okay. Hello, everybody. Then we will do this talk in English. Yeah, as you can see, so I'm Nico. I'm with the Institute for Medical Informatics of University Medical Center in Göttingen. And we had a special guest, which is Sören. He's a resident here in our cardiology department. Unfortunately, he got sick. So I have, as we say in Germany, a Trostpreis for you, which is Philip. Because we will focus on heart failure, and I'm a computer scientist, so my knowledge about medicine is quite limited, but that's why we have Philip here today with us. He's a PhD student in our group, and he will cover all the medical stuff. Yeah, so because if I do it, there probably will be some error, so we have an expert here on the medical questions. Yeah, and as Andreas introduced, this talk will cover a study that we are currently conducting in University Medical Center Göttingen. Unfortunately, we are not that far that we have some actual results. So just to have some expectation management, we will show you some first insights and some challenges and lessons learned that we did while planning and conducting the study. But it's not like that we have some quantitative results that we could show here, but we will discuss it at the end. So just to give you some information on the study, as I said, we are in University Medical Center in Göttingen. Here you can see our beautiful building. It's very nicely climated, so we are really relaxed. We have like 22 degrees, and I hope that everybody here who's maybe joining from home or from offices without climate control, I hope that you are fine. This study is funded by the DZHK, the Deutsche Zentrum für Herz-Kreislauf-Forschung, which is one of the Zentrums der Gesundheitsforschung. I think that's the official name. Probably you could translate it to Centers of Medicine in Germany. These are very large research consortia, which are funded by the BMBF. And the DZHK has 7 partner sites. We are part of the partner site Lower Saxony, and there are in total 31 institutions in all these partner sites. And yeah, this project here is funded, we applied for it, our group, and we got it funded last year. It has a one-time for overall this year. And you can see that the topic is predicting heart failure recovery by wearables and machine learning. So this is what we want to focus on today. And at the bottom, you can see again the funding information, and we have a positive ethics vote of University Medical Center in Göttingen to conduct this study. And why we put not Apple Watch into the title of this talk, but wearables, is because the Apple Watch is just a product that we are using. But as you all know, wearables stormed our field of research. Medical monitoring has been now like 10 or 15 years, I would say. There's been a hype for wearable devices. And they are not only smartwatches. There are, as you all know, we all have very smart devices in our pockets, which are our smartphones that we can use, of course, as medical sensors. Then we have smartwatches, but we also have like fitness bands that maybe you use while running, like respiratory belts. There are many handheld devices. Here is one example that you can see. It's a very small device. I don't have one with me, but it's very small. You just press your fingers on it and it measures an electrocardiogram. Then we have also patches that you can put on your chest to measure an electrocardiogram, or you have, which you can see here right at the bottom, a traditional cable or lead-based electrocardiogram. So this is what here in our cardiology department is doing multiple times a day, 100 times a week. And this is, let's say, the clinical standard. So if you have, let's say, chest pain, or you have like a regular monitoring of your health, you get a ECG via cables. These are attached, let's say, to your chest or to your arms and legs. And then you measure the electrical activity of the heart using these cables, basically. But as you can see, there are many wearables becoming available, which allow us to measure that more unobtrusively, so in a way that it does not disturb us. Because these cable-based measurements, you can do them, of course, at home, but they are really annoying. You have these cables, you cannot shower. So having something like a small patch on your chest or like a clock at your arm is, of course, much easier. And there are many studies that have shown that these devices, so here again are some examples from Apple Watches, but not only, that these devices have powerful capabilities, so we can use them for diagnosis. On the top left, you can see the very famous Apple Heart study, but they can also be used to predict lab values. So that is a work in Nature Medicine. I think it's now more or less 1 month ago. We had an interesting talk by Julian here. He joined us, so I put their paper here as well, where they use smartwatches to monitor Parkinson patients. And there's another work I found which claims to identify Parkinson's disease years before clinical diagnosis. So yeah, as you can see, there's much attention in this field of research, many high impact works being published. So at the moment we have this trend towards this novel technology. And of course, we are also interested in our daily research. Yeah, what's the potential? Can we use them? And this is where I will hand over to Philip.
Yeah, so we can switch. So I'm Philip Hempel, and the reason why I'm the Trostpreis is I was paramedic for 10 years, driving ambulance. So I've seen many of these patients, because what's very classical for heart failure, you can see here that the patients have an enlarged heart and they have water problems. So they have like edema, so water in the tissue, in the legs and in the lungs. In the legs, it's just disturbing, it's a chronic thing, but when they start to accumulate water in the lungs, they're drowning from inside. So we see these patients at the epicrisis. First patient I've seen there was completely blue because they are so in this edema in the lungs that the oxygen cannot surpass to the blood anymore. And really, so you see them, they're fighting for their lives. They have the really blue skin, like you could not even imagine before seeing such a patient. It's like looking like a schlumpf. So it's like really impressive to see that. And then you can really just use like high pressure to pressure the water in the lungs again into the blood system, and then they're getting very regular skin color again and getting fine again. So we can really good save them in emergency medicine. But just to give you some short background here, we have it's a very high prevalence this disease. And yeah, it's like very characteristic that they have this epicrisis, this attacks where their heart is like accumulation of this pulmonary edema, so water in the lungs. And we see in those patients that when they are diagnosed with this disease, it's like aggravating. So they have several epicrises and it's getting worse, and their life expectation is not that large anymore. And we can really do something here. If they are like getting properly treated, we can get them many like life quality and even like many years more to live. So here, let's go to the phenotype. We diagnose it based on ejection fraction. That means how many blood is pumped through the heart. Very interesting and characteristic in the heart is if one side of the heart pumps less blood, the other also does this. It's a very basic thing that the heart do, because otherwise the blood would be wrongly distributed in the body. So we see in this ejection fraction exactly what's happening in the body and in the lungs, and I only have to measure it once. And we just characterize it with ejection fraction below 50%, or below 35% would be then like a very large epicrisis, large disease state. And we see it's very equally distributed between male and female. And we were focusing on this reduced ejection fraction. So patients with heart failure with a very high disease burden. So the ejection fraction in these patients we were targeting is below 40%, which seems very low, but you have to be aware that the regular patient has 50%. So because it's just one side of the heart we are measuring, so it's 10% less. But if you imagine how often your blood is like passing through your heart during one day, 40% is quite a lot. And if you ask those patients with like chronic heart failure, they are like saying, okay, I cannot do any stairs anymore. I have no quality of life because I will always like have to make breaks and stop and breathe again. So it's like very quality of life thing as well to treat these patients properly. So we see in the etiology that is why like the causes for this disease, that they have many other comorbidities. So like disease leading to this heart failure. Heart failure is not a singularity that like this appears in this patient. It's often the consequence of structural heart disease, no? Like coronary heart disease. So it's like the supply of the heart itself, hypertension, like this epicrisis in heart failure patients. It's often caused with hypertensive crisis. So the blood pressure is so high that there is some circle where the blood pressure is always rising in those patients, and we have to like lower it really quickly to save them. And often they also have like valve disease arrhythmias, so like the valves separating the chambers of the heart. So we have many comorbidities, but it's all leading to the same structural consequence in the heart. And we see these patients in this epicrisis, which you can like see here. Do you see? Yeah, perfect. So we see them always here. So we have crisis where they're like fighting for their life, and we have to like intervene with like medicine and with like respiratory systems, with emergency medicine, and we get them fine again, but they're like always aggravating. And this is like regularly 5 years when we like first see them in the hospital. The expectation of life is really not that high, but we have to try to keep them here, and we can, like, if we treat this etiology, so the comorbidities, we really can increase this in these patients. So here, this is the same graph you can see, just other way around. You see the severity here, and we see, we have these patients only when they have these distinct symptoms, but the structural heart disease, it's always there, and we should always see them in the data. And our goal is to improve this situation, because if you see here, if we can predict this epicrisis before, that would be like the main goal of all heart failure treatment, then we can prevent it. So we know that it's aggravating, and we can prevent maybe this whole pulmonary edema, so the water in the lungs, before it even happens. So I guess I can now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so much to the fundamentals, and now let's talk a bit about what are we actually trying to achieve in this project. There are basically 3 research questions. The first one is it actually feasible to use an Apple Watch on this target patient group? Because of course there are many works which show that that many patient groups are willing to use or very motivated to use it, but it's not clear if it's actually working for heart failure patients which are coming to the hospital. Because as Philip explained, when they are coming into the hospital, they are in a very bad state. And the question is, in this situation, are they willing to actually use an Apple Watch? Can they maintain it? What about battery status, etc.? So that was our first research question. The second one is, can we actually establish an, let's call it, economical workflow in our clinic for equipping the patient with an Apple Watch? Because unfortunately, a big topic always in all healthcare is money and funding. So, and the question is, if you want to use, let's say, an Apple Watch, of course, we could use any other kind of smartwatch. Can we use it in a way that is economically wise and maybe reduces costs? Because, as you all know, that's one of the key points in current medicine, reducing the costs. And the third one, which is, I guess, for my group or for us is most interesting, is, let's say now we gather the data with the Apple Watch. Can we actually use the data to predict something? And here are some examples, because, so for example, this NT-proBNP, it's a blood marker that you currently measure via blood, which is used to assess how bad the situation for this heart failure patient is. If we could replace this blood measurement with an Apple Watch, it would be, of course, a very cool thing. Because then this would one way to completely change the way we diagnose this disease. And of course, this is not directly possible because an Apple Watch is not a blood sample, but maybe we can find some kind of correlation. And this is the far aim of this project. Unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, you can see 2 numbers are in bold, where we can show some actual results. The third topic I will have to ask you again to come maybe next year back to, if we do this series again, then we maybe actually have some results on these interesting topics, more interesting topics maybe for us. So let me talk a bit about the study. As I said, we do it in a monocentric way, so we only do it here at UMG. Our target population is 32 patients. This is, of course, a bottleneck of the study and a very low number. We are aware of that. Maybe we can discuss it later. That is because, as you could saw at the beginning, I transparently showed you how much funding we have for this study, and this is basically all we could afford. So this is the motivation for this number. We did not do a power analysis or something to come up with this number. We collect lots of clinical data. This is all the data that is collected not specifically for the study, but which is collected anyway. So as I said, these blood samples, for example, they are done in any way. X-ray and ultrasound, they do it. This is basically all standard care, and we just do the regular standard care according to the guidelines. The only thing we change is that we hand over the patients the Apple Watch. And we have 3 key points in the study. The one is, of course, the inclusion of patients. So we include patients, we try to include them below 24 hours after they arrive here. So if a patient comes to UMG and there is a potential that he or she fits to our inclusion criteria, and if we check the inclusion criteria and see, okay, this patient could take part in our study, we try to give them the Apple Watch within 1 day. And the second visit is before the discharge. So this depends always on how the patient trajectory develops. This can be after a week, but it can also be after multiple weeks. Then there is another clinical visit, and the follow-up of this study is after 3 months. So after the patients went home, 3 months later, we invite them to come back to do some more measurements. And what I have also to say here is that they only use the Apple Watch during their hospital stay. They don't take them with them home. They only use them while they are here in our hospital. We measure the data, and we have this 3 months follow-up to use the data that we measure with the Apple Watch while they are here to predict what will happen 3 months later. Okay, and the inclusion criteria are, as you can see, of course, patients have to give a consent. We only target here adult patients. We use only this HFrEF patient group that Philip introduced before, and they have to be decompensated. That means we don't look for chronic heart failure patients. We only look for, as Philip described, when they are in this decompensated state. And the NT-proBNP, as you can see here, this is this blood value I mentioned. Of course, we have some exclusion criteria. So if people unfortunately have a very low life expectancy, if you have patients like that, they are excluded. Of course, if a patient is not willing to take part or is not able to use a smartwatch, they are excluded. And if they have a valvular disease problem, then they are also excluded. Okay, and now we want to show you some data and some initial insights. So this is just to give you a rough idea of the data that we measure. If I'm pretty sure that the majority of people here probably has an Apple Watch or has a product from another vendor. So probably you are used to it. We just want to show it to give you an idea. This is example data from 24 hours measurements. So you can see it's from 12 o'clock until 12 o'clock of the next day. And now the Apple Watch measures multiple signals. These are all the signals that are measured basically automatically. So you can also manually trigger some measurements, for example, an ECG measurement, but that is something a patient has to manually activate. These are all the measurements that you can see here, which are measured automatically and continuously. And you can see, for example, here on top, you can see the heart rate. These are the blue buttons that you can see here. And you can see, for example, in this area here, so maybe it's between, 1730 and maybe between 17 and 1730. For example, you can see there are no measurements here in all the different values. So probably the patient took the clock off at this point in time. We don't know what happened. Maybe he or she did take a shower or something else. We don't know about that. Just to give you information, of course, there may be parts where there are no measurements. And the interesting question, coming back to the first research question, is how often will that happen, that we don't have any values? Apart from that, you can see that some measurements are done only at specific points in time. For example, here you can see that the Apple Watch measures respiratory rate. Here you can see that these are typical respiratory rates between 18, 20, and 22 per minute. And you can see that they only start here after 21 after 9 o'clock. So these measurements only start when the patient is actually lying down and is calm. And you can see, for example, here, these are step counts. Yeah, and from the step counts, the Apple Watch estimates the distance that has been walked. So you can see that there are probably two possibilities now. The patient stood up at night and maybe went quickly to the bathroom, that you can see here, because here are steps counted. You can also see that the heart rate is increased. So this could happen here, but we don't know. Yeah, the patients are, of course, not supervised by us 24 hours a day. So maybe he or she only awaked, moved in the bed. The Apple Watch measured stepping, measured that the heart rate was going up because he or she awaked. We don't know about that. And yeah, basically you can see that also there are many other features which are extracted here, like energy burned. So these are measurements which the Apple Watch computes, yeah, automatically, probably from the other biosignals. So this is the data that we have, for example, for 1 day. And now the question is, of course, yeah, but we have multiple patients. Yeah, they stay for us for days and weeks. So how can we somehow make sense of all this data? And so we started with the first way to get insight into this by plotting now, let's say, like we call this a day diagram. So you can see basically this is every circle is one patient. These are the patients that we included so far. And you can basically see that there are different circles, like in a tree. And every circle is 1 day. The colors that you can see here, we use pseudo colors here, they represent the heart rate. And they represent the heart rate that is measured via the pulse oximeter. So as you all will know, an Apple Watch or all these clocks have basically a green light, yeah, which is here. And this green light is a pulse oximeter by principle, a reflective one, and it measures the heart rate basically non-stop. So if I go back, if you can see here, this is the same values that are shown here on top. This is the heart rate estimated from the pulse oximeter. So this is what we visualize here. And you can see now that every circle is basically 1 day. So we use this to visualize how often the patients actually have values measured. So this is for us a proxy value. When did they use the Apple Watch? Because the Apple Watch does not give us any kind of information when it's currently used or not. There is no value like I'm currently being read. Yeah, so we have to find a proxy value, and our proxy value here is, for example, this heart rate, because this is measured quite often, yeah, in very short intervals. So this is a good way for us to see, okay, which patients use the Apple Watch a lot and which not so much. Of course, this is now for you probably very hard to see, so let's just zoom in to give you a better view of that. Here you can see now 3 subjects, and you can see, for example, on the left side, this is a subject which probably was very motivated, because you can see he or she stayed with us for multiple days. And you can see that there are only very small parts. I don't know if you can see by mouse, but if you can see is, for example, here and here, you can see that there are only very small intervals where the watch is not delivering any values. Yeah, while in contrast, you can see that the 2 other subjects, yeah, there are more often like breaks where the Apple Watch is not being used or does not produce any values. So now, of course, we could look into that into detail. And for example, it's very interesting to see that for this subject in the center, there are always values at night. But you can see that at the day, there are lesser values. So probably, maybe he or she was using it at night because it was not disturbing her or him. But then a day, maybe the Apple Watch was annoying, and so he or she put it off. We don't know about that. And yeah, interestingly, here you can see another example where there is a very big gap here right at the center for multiple days. Again, we don't know what happened. It could be the reason that maybe this patient yeah, got a very, let's say, her or his health was declining. That could be a reason. So there was not much motivation to actually use the Apple Watch because there were more important things to focus on. We don't know about that, but you can see that here some data is missing. And but after that, he or she started reusing it. And we also looked at the values initially to get an idea. Okay, maybe there are things that happen clinically. Yeah, and this here is, for example, one of these examples. So just again, here you can see, for example, an example of a subject that probably was annoyed by the Apple Watch at night, because you can see that here are some gaps. Maybe he or she did not like the Apple Watch, took it off at night. Again, we don't know about that. But as I hope you can see, I don't know how good is the color distribution on your screens, but you can basically see that here in the center, there's a very, there is a very different heart rate. So what is these values here are very different from the values after a certain interval. Yeah, so I put up an arrow here in case you cannot see the difference, but there is a very big difference in the heart rate. So the question is now, what happened here? Yeah, so again, apparently something happened here in therapy. Yeah, that the heart rate of this patient was changing rapidly from one day to the other day. This is something we can also see here in the Apple Watch data. And of course, we now have to check. When I say we don't know, of course, we know a bit about the patients, but we are not at the moment at this part where we actually look into the clinical data. Once we have the clinical data, we will actually see, okay, what happened here. Okay, and now, this is, of course, again, a very not user-friendly slide. We are very sorry for that. This is, but we wanted to give it to you to show the potential that these smartwatches, or here's the Apple Watch, has. These is our current state of the study. So you can see that every column is one patient that was included in our study. And you can see that in the rows, you can see the different parameters of the Apple Watch. And here on the last column, you can basically see the sum of all these features measured. And down below here, the bold value at the bottom of the column is basically the sum for a different patient. So, for example, for this first patient, we have 4,840 values measured, single values measured by the Apple Watch. And now you can see, because we ordered them in this way, which values are measured the most. And you can see that, as I already announced, the heart rate is measured quite often. So you can see that overall we have now more than 40,000 values for the heart rate, while others are measured, less. And you can see that here on top, we have I would say maybe 8 to 10 parameters, which are measured quite often with a very high frequency. While here down below are some values which are measured really rarely. So you can see that here are some, if you look into details of them, you can see that down below here the values, they are often focusing on gait and movement of patients. So for example, here this one is walking speed, walking step lengths, etc. And you can see it's only computed for some patients. So as you can imagine, the patients that we have here, as Philip introduced, they are in a very bad state, so they are not walking around that much. So therefore, we have only less values here for some patients, which are actually so fit that they were able to walk around in the hospital. And fitting maybe to, where is it? Fitting to the current weather, you can also see there's a parameter called time in daylight. So this study was, I think all the subjects here came before the current heat wave, but you can also see only some subjects were actually in daylight. We don't know how the Apple measures it, or maybe it's only very bright light. So maybe it's also false measurements, we don't know it. But you can see coming from that, only 3 of the patients spent time in daylight during the study. And as you can see, there's a plethora of values, coming from different measurements which are done automatically. I only want to point you to this value here, which is the number of ECGs, because this is a value that the patients actually have to do independently. This is something that is not the Apple Watch is doing for them. So the measurement principle is that you take the Apple Watch and then you have to activate the measurement, and then you pick your finger on the crown, and then you have to hold still for, I think, more or less 20-30 seconds. Then this ECG measurement is initiated. So this is something they actually have to do on their own, and they need to be motivated to do it. And as you can see, all the patients did those measurements, some more often, some lesser. But overall, we have more than 360 ECG values, and we are quite happy with that. Because these are also very contain and give us a very good insight into the patient's health that we would not have if they would not use the Apple Watch. In a normal setting, we only do 1 or 2 ECGs while they are in hospital, but definitely not these high numbers that we have here. And another thing, of course, you can also see that some values are basically not measured, and we don't know why. So for example, here you can see there's a value called sleep analysis and respiratory rate. The respiratory rate is what I showed you at the beginning on this 24 hours example, which was only measured at night. And you can see that, for example, for this patient here, for this column, there are no sleep analysis values and no respiratory rate values. We don't know what happened. Maybe he or she did not use the Apple Watch and put it off at night. Or maybe this patient was moving too much. Maybe moving a lot at night, so the signal quality was too low, so the Apple Watch did not compute any values. But again, we don't know about that. Another thing, which is of course of interest for us is adherence. So how motivated are patients to do it? So this is coming back to the first research question. And so we have very motivated study nurses. So to be honest, it's not our job to do that, but the study nurses, they reported to us that they do a great job, and they are really good in contacting people, contacting potential subjects, and we have lots of positive feedback and many people wanting to actually take part in the study, which is great. And because we should not forget, these patients, they are quite old, and have a high disease burden. So it's not like they are just coming to hospital like for, I don't know, for holiday and are super relaxed. So they are in a really bad state. But despite of that, they are really motivated to take part, interested in using the Apple Watch. And here's again the median value. So in a median, they all did during the hospital stay 23 ECG measurements, which is way up our expectations. So we are really happy about that. In some rare cases, patients also decided to not use the Apple Watch continuously. This is what I've shown. So maybe at night. And another thing which is important, we did not observe any interference with the regular care. Because we should not forget, these patients, they are in a hospital and they undergo our regular care here. So they are being treated with many different devices. They get an X-ray measurement, etc. They are also taken care of. They are washed, etc. So there are many potential problems, but so far, with our experience, the Apple Watch is doing a good job and can be integrated into the setting. Okay, and now you are probably very interested in that. And here I want to invite you all. As you know, this is part of basically our preparation for the GMDS annual meeting in Dresden in September. So it's not long, it's in a month, more or less. So, of course, we hope that many of you will join the GMDS. And we have a poster presentation here on the 9th. And Tabea from our group will present it. And this will focus exactly on the adherence of the subjects, of our study population, and their motivation. And until then, we are very optimistic to have much more results than we have now. So, we want to kindly invite you all to join us here at this poster presentation. Okay, now, coming to a conclusion. As I said, we are not finished with the study. Actually, we now included 50% of the targeted study population. So more or less 60 patients. But we have to add that, of course, as you remember from the beginning, we have this 3 months follow-up. And this 3 months follow-up, it's only for 10 patients. So 10 patients went through the whole process. 50% stayed with us in hospital, but did not undergo the follow-up. And of course, we need the follow-up. That's why we could not present any data on that, to see, can we use the data accumulated with the Apple Watch in hospital to predict the follow-up. So this is something maybe at the GMDS meeting, maybe we have some first insight into that and can present something to you. A problem that we observed, as you know, in AI in general, we have talked a lot about biases. And the problem, a potential bias that we see is that so far the majority of our study population is male, which could also be, of course, be part of this disease. But as you know, if you want to train whatever kind of model, you have to take care that there is no bias included. So we have to see to motivate or find more patients which are female and actually want to take part in our study. Okay. Apart from that, we developed an efficient workflow. We didn't show it here so much, but you can imagine to develop a workflow which is efficient, works, because we have different involved person groups into that. Also, of course, we need to take big care of data protection, etc. So we developed that and are happy how it works. The challenges that we observed is, of course, one thing is to introduce the Apple Watch to patients in a way that they actually understand the Apple Watch and know what to do. This is a very important part for our study nurses. Then what we developed at the beginning and was not as easy as we expect is to actually define a standard procedure for the Apple Watch setup, because it's quite lengthy. It takes, I would say, more or less an hour to set up an Apple Watch. And of course, every Apple Watch has to be set up the same way. So this took us some time. And another problem is, of course, battery charging. The Apple Watches that we have need to be recharged like every 2 days. So every 2 days, someone has to be with the patients, talk to them, because battery charging also takes some time. So here we needed to find a good strategy to have enough manpower to actually being able to do that. Our lesson learned is, which we are very happy about, is that the patients are very open and interested. So we did not expect so motivated patients. And maybe a small outlook. What we also thought about in the study is there maybe potential to also use it for outpatients, to basically not take the Apple Watch away from them after their hospital stay, but maybe give them the Apple Watch to use at home. Because as you remember from the beginning, Philip showed you this trend line, which was going down. So now maybe you can fill a small gap, when they are in a hospital, but of course it would be great to monitor them over all time, ideally, so also at home. And we see potential for that. Of course, this is not part of the study, but maybe something for future work. Okay, and with this, we are at the end. I thank you all for your attention. We were, especially I want to thank you the people which actually work in this project. So Tabea is with us. I also see, okay, Till had to leave, I see. So we also have Sophia and Sören. Unfortunately, as I said, he's sick today. But thanks to these guys, and we are now open for any kind of questions.
Any questions from anybody?
Gregory, just go ahead. I think you can just ask. It's not that we have too many questions.
I think Susan was the first one. She raised the hand, so maybe
okay. I did not see.
Oh, this was the applaud button, not the raising hand button.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Then I ask the question. So I'm sorry if I misunderstood the concept of the study, or if I misunderstood anything. So basically, if as far as I get, the participants of the study, patients, they are using the Apple Watch after they already got to the emergency room, right?
Exactly.
I see. And then having this 24-hour data, you try to predict if they gonna appear in emergency room again.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, it's exactly as you said. So let's say, they come to us here at this point, and then we want to see, because here now it says usually years, but this is not the case. So it can happen in very short time. That they leave hospital and come back very soon. So we already have subjects in our study, that we sent home and came back in very short time. But of course, I see your point. This is why I mentioned at the end, of course, it would be great to not start here when it's actually too late, when they are in the emergency room, but to start here.
Exactly.
Exactly. And this is, of course, what can be maybe done, but only if they have the Apple Watch at home. Because, or maybe, basically they need the Apple Watch at home for that. And that's why we were thinking maybe we could target that.
And it's also the fundamental problem of the disease itself. No? We only see the patient at their worst state, and we could have prevented it before. If we would, it's completely easy. You just need nitrates more. You have to dehydrate the people. It's very easy to do this in advance. And this here is a proof of concept that we can see this patient trajectory with the Apple Watch. And then the next step would be to do it like in between this epic crisis, and in best case, before the first epic crisis even appears.
I see. Yeah. By the way, you said that people need to get natrium in order to get rid of water, or maybe I misunderstood. You said that people need to get some natrium or nitrite.
Nitrate. You use furosemide firstly to dehydrate them, and in the acute situation when they have this breathing problems because of the water in the lungs, you just give them nitroglycerol trinitrate, so nitroglycerine basically, which is doing this NO based vasodilatation, and that's immediately, because you apply it sublingual, this immediately just enlarges the vessels of the venous system, and this is like the best thing what you can do for those patients.
I see. Yeah. Thank you. I wasn't aware of it. Yeah. Yeah, I also have a comment concerning the circles that you showed. Yeah, so for example, here it is yeah, okay. I think now I understand a little bit, but so when I first saw it, I was not understanding what is this spot in the middle. I mean, of course, I understood later after you described, but maybe it would make sense to have a distance between different days so that you could see like not a uniform figure inside, but a figure with some spaces in between. So for example, if you cut a tree, and then you look at the tree, you see that these circles are separated. So, for example, on the left image, it's like it's very uniform, not color-wise, but density-wise. You know what I mean? Or
absolutely, yeah, you're totally right, and we did that before. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I cannot find it right now to show it to you. It's a perfect valid point, yeah, to add more distance to it. Why we did not do it is if you go back to this figure, you can see that we have many patients which only stays for some days. And then we have the patient here who stays for very long. And we wanted to show them all together, like you can see here. And if you dynamically adjust basically the difference between the different days, then it looks very strange. Because then you cannot see that here we ordered them from top left, less time in hospital, to top right, most time in hospital. And if you let this visualization do the time difference automatically, it looks strange because you do not understand this. Yeah. But it's a good point. As I said, we did this before, but for this presentation, I thought it would be a bit more intuitive to understand it in this way. But as you said, if the visibility, if you increase the distance between the circles, is much increased.
I see. Another question in here. So, for example, if you take a look at the very left circle,
this one,
upper one, very left upper one. Yeah. I for example, how many days this person was staying?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let me shortly try to open this figure in parallel and to zoom in. The problem is, so this is a high quality or high resolution PDF, but the issue is with LibreOffice, which I'm using here, that you as you can see, the resolution is as you can see here, the resolution gets bad. I don't know why. So we created a nice, very high quality PDF, but we cannot, somehow LibreOffice does not show it. So let me quickly open here it in a different PDF, and then we can zoom in. Let's try to do that. And then I can tell you, because I don't know by heart. I have to also count the lines. So,
but the basic impression it would be that we have for some patients 2 or 3 days only, and for other, like the big one, it's like, I guess 16, 17 days or something. So yeah, the amount of data is really not like very constant, but we take what we have. Right? So like we would never stop the recording because it's a variable. No? So
Tabea just mentioned it was about 4 days, right? Let's see if the picture shows the same.
Yeah, can you see? I don't know. Did I share the?
I
Yeah,
see.
we see it. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So you can see we can count now, and I would say it's like 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So of course, some patients, as you know, some people, of course, also decide to not leave the study. Of course, if a patient says, "I don't want to take part anymore," they have the right that we delete their data, and of course we do that, and this happened. But of course, there are also some patients who say, "Okay, I want to take part," and after 2 or 3 days, they say, "Nah, I'm not interested anymore." So probably this is one of these candidates.
or they even leave the hospital.
Also,
because we take the Apple Watch when they leave, and they will not stay because of the Apple Watch project. So when this epic crisis is over, many patients just want to go home again. So that's like also a limiting factor here.
Yeah, I unfortunately cannot suggest anything better here. So, which one could say that my criticism is not constructive, but my criticism here is that it's like basically for different days you have different circle lengths, and then the density of points also changing from day to day. So the gaps become different. I mean, angular difference is the same, but the length is different, right? So if a person is having 1 hour gap at the beginning, and if a person has an hour gap in the last day, then the lengths would be very different.
Yeah, but completely right. We would anyway like proceed with the quality data exploration as next step, and we thought about a traffic light system. So like red, yellow, and green, and then we can hopefully show like how the values are developing. Not only here we show how many values we have, and like just a broad understanding of how the data looks like. But the next step would be like to show exactly for not only heart rate but for other parameters as well, whether they are like it's possible to go this patient trajectory.
And in the meantime, here I found the old version. The color map is a different one, but these is in principle the same idea. But you can see now this is where the space is different and depends on the number of days they stay. But if you look now here and now compare it to this, it looks a bit strange and not that intuitive. Therefore, we decided to fix the interval between the circles. Because this here is only like 2, 3 days, and this here is like many days. But if you compare them, it's a bit complicated to get the idea that these are different lengths of hospital stays.
I see.
But of course, you can discuss a lot about these issues. We just sort of try to find a way which helps us to summarize the data, give us an intuitive idea. Because if you try it this way, and I think this is the computer science way, or how you think usually, you don't see anything. Because then it's just too much, and therefore we decided to in this way. But of course, we think of different ways to present the data.
Actually, thank you for showing this plot. I did not realize that there were spirals, not like coaxial cylinders, or not like not like circles, but actually spirals. And I thought maybe it makes sense to have circles, but I don't know. I mean, maybe one could try.
I got my microphone to work. I don't know if you can hear me, but I did try it with circles, and then I got confused because I mean it's not a circle, but it's like the day goes on, right? It doesn't really repeat itself. So I was thinking maybe it's more intuitive to kind of make the time continue in a way and not have the day stop after 24 hours.
I
so
see.
that's why I did the spiral and not the circles.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tabea is doing all the actual work. And everyone of you knows how messy it can be to go into PyPlot and to do such kinds of things.
Okay, are there any other questions? I think we now talked a lot about visualizations.
I think there are some questions in the chat, right?
I think I closed it, not on purpose.
Yeah, maybe you just look at the chat and
yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. So the question came back to the special case I've shown here. So if the heart rate differences may reflect treatment changes. Yeah, and we are very sure of that. So of course, to a certain degree, heart rate changes are, normal. Yeah, if we do sports, yeah, of course the heart rate changes, but of course, a sudden change like that, yeah, is very drastic. And this is of course coming from a treatment. There are also, as you know, as Philip introduced at the beginning, many patients have different kind of cardiac diseases. And so there are also therapies where you basically try to reset the heart. And this can also lead to a very sudden change in the heart rate. Yeah, and this could happen here, for example. And of course, there's the issue of medication. Of course, we store all that information. We don't have it yet, but at the end, of course, if the medication changes in heart rate might also result from the medication.
Yeah, for example, in this patient, it could be just many patients still get metoprolol, so beta blocker for hypertension. And I would assume that when you have a decompensated heart failure patient, you would change that because you want to more the sympathoadrenic reactions, and this would increases heart rate immediately, and that would explain that it's very bradycardic in the end. So because you see after this therapy or what changes, the heart is beating in a regular frequency. Before it was way too slow.
And again, we have to say at everything we have to take with a grain of salt. The Apple Watch is using a pulse oximeter for heart rate measurement.
Oh, yes.
We don't know how accurate are the measurements. So everything we see here has to be taken with a grain of salt. There are many studies who actually try to estimate the standard error of the Apple Watch. But again, of course, we have here patients. They are not regular healthy volunteers that probably use the Apple Watch during development, but very sick patients. So it can also be that many of the values we see are prone to errors.
And here's also a very good question, whether we are able to get the data of the Apple Watch directly or after the hospital stay. And yeah, that's one issue we are in our setup. We can only get some data afterwards. So it would not be, if you would go in direction to an interventional study where you directly intervene, then we would use a completely different setting because we just take the Apple Watch, connect it, and then get the data. So it's nothing fancy digital wireless thingy. So,
but you could do that. So in theory, so we only give to the patients the Apple Watch. We don't give them the smartphone. Yeah, the Apple Watch is linked to. And what you could do is you could, of course, take a very motivated study nurse that runs from every patient from day to day with the connected smartphones and gets the data automatically, because this is done automatically. As soon as the iPhone is in vicinity to the Apple Watch, the data is set. So this would be possible, but we decided against it because for us, there is no extra value in that. So after the patients left the hospital, we take the data.
Yeah. And it's an observational study, so
we
would not intervene, even if we don't know, have this kind of insights yet. But even if we have in the next studies this kind of insights, we would not intervene. It's not we're no doctors, it's observational study.
Yeah.
So and very good that Till is not here because he's the most active study nurse. He would hate it to go 10 times per day for the funds.
And of course, you always have to be also careful because the Apple Watch measures everything. So it's not trivial to set up the Apple Watch and bring it to a patient without adding your own walking data. So this is what we were confused at the beginning when we looked at the data from our first subjects. Oh, wow, why were they so active and running around in the hospital? Because you set up the Apple Watch, you bring it to the Till, let's say, brings it to them, and then suddenly there are, I don't know, 10,000 steps or something, because Till had to walk all across the medical campus.
Yeah, and he's a healthy guy, so he's
so that's also
walking speed, I would say.
So this is also something you have to take in mind. It's that these devices, they are monitoring continuously. Yeah, you cannot stop it, which is nice. Yeah, but also brings some challenges. Okay, I think these were all the questions from the chat.
I also have another, like, I'm
Sure.
just curious about, did you build any model already? How did you manage to build some modeling for that to predict? Not yet? I see.
No, not yet. Yeah. So at the moment we focused on extracting the data because I told you that that we have 3 patients who actually are now did the follow-up. So, but this happened, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. So this is exactly our next steps that we want to do. And to think of, because, yeah, you know, you saw the table. Yeah, we now have a plethora of different values. They are all coming also in different, we have time series like the ECG, we have point measurements, we have completely different units. So this is exactly what we want to target next, to think about, okay, what could be a useful model? Which data do we want to use? And yeah, but these are exactly our next steps.
I see. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question too.
Yeah, sure.
Apple Watch is one of the few smartwatches which is where the ECG measuring system is certified by the FDA. Do you think it will make a significant positive impact that is certified, or regarding the quality of the data?
Yeah, that's of course a good question. So maybe I can also elaborate a bit on why we choose the Apple Watch. Because, you know, yeah, it's not like we are Apple fanboys. I personally don't have any Apple products. We use the Apple Watch also in part due to this reason, yeah, because we know it's to a certain degree certified. But this was not our main reason. Yeah, so I would also have chosen any other smartwatch when it comes to the ECG hardware, because at the end, I think ECG is 100 years old. It should be out-engineered. Yeah? So I don't expect there to be too much innovation in it. But what our reason was here to go with the Apple Watch was that we can make sure that the data actually never leaves. So the data stays only on the Apple Watch and allows an easy export into a XML file. This was our main motivation, because from many other smartwatches, the data is stored automatically in the cloud somewhere, and then you're completely, yeah, this is not our ballpark. Yeah, we cannot do that. We have to make sure it only stays within the hospital, within a single device, and this was our main motivation. But let's see. So of course, you know, yeah, we as a biosignals group, the ECG is of course very close to our heart. And we expect a lot from this ECG measurement for the predictive power of the models that we develop. So let's see how good it is. But our results, I think, will tell.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Susanne.
Maybe I also have another question. Obviously not in this study, but I mean, if let's assume your model is successful and you want to continue to go this route, would it then make sense to also extend kind of what you mentioned before, kind of to the home of the patient? Of course, then they're not hospitalized anymore, but especially, I mean, if you want to see the kind of if you want to observe the times between hospitalization, what happens there at home, then I think this would be also very good for the model, I can imagine, or for such a model. Yeah. So maybe a follow-up study is then already in your mind, or too early to talk about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Or it has something to do with financing, as we all know, of course. That's another topic. Somebody has to always give the money for doing that stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. But exactly, that would be our next step, like to go here between 2 phases. No? So we have the patients now, they said yes initially when they were in a bad state. So we would assume that they would also take the Apple Watch with them when they're in a good shape again. And like then predicting these epic crises would be great. But I guess for our funding, it would be very good if we have here in our initial study shown that we are able to do it and that we have like some good parameters. And then I guess the next step would be much more easier than to solve it.
Yeah, and I think it makes total sense. But of course, the problem is that, yeah, as you said, funding, because then we have to consider many other things that at the moment we did not have to consider. when it comes to data protection, because then they will also, then they will take the device out of the hospital, will take it home. We don't know will they use it. Yeah, at the moment we have the big advantage that we have a motivated team and they are regularly visited, the patients. They cannot go anywhere. They are in their room, so we know where they are. We can go there and tell, hello, did you use the Apple Watch? Did you remember to make an ECG? Did you charge the battery? But once they are home, of course, this is very hard, maybe possible, but only in a very reduced setting, maybe seeing them in a range of weeks. And so the question is, do we actually get the same data quality from home measurements compared to our, let's say, supervised setting here in a hospital? Of course, we try to not add any bias. So we only, it's not like we are sitting next to them for all the day and keep controlling, are they actually using the Apple Watch? We try to keep them independent and only remind them, hey, you are part of the study. But once they are at home, I assume that the data quality probably is reduced. And then the question is, does the model have enough predictive power to also predict something from this very reduced data set?
Yeah, I think the strength of such device, of course, is that I mean, you could use an app on the Apple Watch to remind the guys from time to time, right? Maybe even depending on if they do it or not, right? So this small app could see if they do it regularly, maybe no reminder is necessary, because if I remember my own PhD thesis, when we did stuff with the PDA at this point in time, Palm stuff, right? When before all this time where Apple Watches and even smartphones were invented. I mean, not a surprising result, but the reminder was kind of the reminder function was absolutely key for data quality. I mean, we even compared reminder with non-reminder, and if you don't remind the guys, forget about the data. If you remind them, it was quite good.
Yeah, I would expect the same. And of course, there are ways to realize that. As you know, these patients are also, it's not like they are completely isolated at home. These are patients who have a serious medical problem. So of course, there are different stakeholders in the process that could take care of that. Yeah, let's say they are, I don't know, visited regularly by any kind of caregiver. This caregiver could remind them, please use the Apple Watch. So I think there's, thinking of the future, there is potential, but of course, funding for such a study would be quite high. And let's see. Of course, we keep our eyes open and try different opportunities. But the future will tell if we are successful. And of course, for now, what's most important to not think about ideas, but to take the data that we have, develop a nice model, and see how capable is this model to actually do what we want to do, predict this, epicreases, and then I think we can think of a follow-up project.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, and I think with this, I don't see any further raised hands. I would just like to remind you again to visit the poster at the GMDS conference, and of course we have the session where we all will come together. We are looking really much forward to it. And apart from that, I think maybe we can announce the next talk. I think it's already next week, right, Andreas?
Could be also in 2 weeks. Let me just check. I have full screen now, so I have to just get this smaller.
Okay.
To get my calendar. Wait a second. No, it's in 2 weeks from now, on the 28th, right? Okay. And then we will have on the 2nd of September the talk from the ETH Zurich, which we moved to the 2nd, and then on the 4th, it's already a Wednesday again, then we have our last one. And then then the week later, then the GMDS already started, right? So we have in the 2 weeks before the GMDS, we will have 3 talks, and next week there's nothing scheduled.
Okay, we are looking forward, and thank you for the attention, and then see you in the next event.
thank you for this great talk.